Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Indie Talks podcast. My name is Kozacinski, your host, and today I'm joined by Gasper Sopi, my dear friend, a designer, world traveler, a freelancer, digital nomad, and all-around amazing guy. And I'm so happy that he will be sharing some of his stories and experiences with us. I'm going to be asking him a bunch of questions, and we're just going to see where this goes. So, hi, Gasper. Can you please introduce yourself? And then we're going to just start.
Hi, Tom. First of all, thanks so much for inviting me to our podcast. It's really an honor to be here and be able to continue our conversations that we usually have, which are like very, very dear to me and very engaging. So I'm really excited to be with this opportunity and, you know, to take this podcast to where it has to be. So regarding me, I mean, you said basically the overall kind of my professional profile, which is in the creative industry in design. I started off in early 2000 as a web designer, and then moved to branding and marketing. Eventually specialized in digital marketing. Was working for a bunch of agencies in Croatia, where I was based at that time. Went briefly to Spain to expand my horizons and continue my education. Did a master there in cognitive systems and interactive media. Came back to Croatia and then figured out that sort of the industry, the creative industry and the digital industry, software development was picking up. So I called on a friend of mine and suggested him that we should kind of, you know, take advantage of this opportunity. So we decided to found a software development and design agency, and we also partnered with another sort of a friend of the friend, was the third co-founder. That was happening in late 2012. Built the agency until 2016, and then I decided sort of to go traveling and switch to the remote kind of organization. And basically, I've been on the road ever since. You know, in spare time, I continue to do consulting, but I also kind of ventured into different interests, you know, like investing and photography and things that sort of, you know, I enjoy doing. And not necessarily for monetary reasons.
Yeah, cool. Okay, let's start with you coming back from Spain and deciding to start an agency. You started from scratch, right?
Yeah, I guess you can say that. I mean, at that point, I was already kind of had built a sort of a name, if I can say that, in the sort of Croatian market. Having gone through a couple of agencies, so I had a sort of a broad network of contacts and people and coworkers. So it wasn't really like from scratch because I wasn't like a noob. I was already at that point I was already like 10 years into the business. But it was from scratch in terms that it was bootstrapped. So I was investing my own money and time. We didn't have any backing, so it was kind of, in that sense, it was building from zero. Yeah.
So you had 10 years of work experience before starting your own business.
Yeah, I was about 10 years, a little bit more.
Can you recall what was the main driver to make a decision to go from, okay, I'm a employee, I'm doing really well, people know who I am, know about my work, and what was the main driver to make you do the switch and say, okay, I'm gonna now do my thing and just go solo?
I kind of lost you there on the couple of seconds. So if you can repeat the question, maybe that's better for your editing.
Sure. Okay.
So what was the main driver? Yeah.
So what was the main driver for you to go from being a full-time employee and like being good at what you do, making a name for yourself, to make a switch and go and start your own thing? Like what was the main driver to make that decision?
All right. Yeah, so I think there was a couple of reasons. One of them was I always felt I wasn't able to assert my vision on how things should work in a creative agency. You know, it was always a struggle to figure out with all your superiors what is the best way to do the job. It was always kind of difficult to get your vision out there. So for me, that meant to make more compromises than I thought were useful to my work and to my development as a designer at that time, or a creative professional. So that was one part, was like, hey, how can I do my best work? How can I create an environment where I can do my best work without having it killed down by the levels above the decision makers in the agency. The second was, which is kind of related to this one, basically I always thought that like being a boss in a creative environment is everything but being a boss. It's more like, it should be like, hey, you're the guy that kind of is pushing everybody to do their best work, and you're not kind of being bossy, but you're kind of being this very, I don't know how to say, like nurturing force that just allows others to progress and to sort of become the best version of themselves. And
so you basically
like,
create the environment for the people to do their best work.
Yeah. And I always thought like the bosses that I had were like not really fitting this expectation or this vision. So I thought maybe I can be someone like that. And I always had like ideas how an organization, like a company, should work. That it shouldn't be always like money comes first, but more like seeing it as a playground. At that point, like Google was kind of the idea of a company culture which allows people, and this is like 10 years ago, right? Almost 10 years ago. So it wasn't so many companies that were doing kind of following the same culture, which is, hey, let's make work more like play rather than just, grinding and then, working paycheck to paycheck. And then you go back home and then you actually start to live and do the things you love. Like, can we actually make a company where people come to do what they love, and that would do it, that would even maybe pay to be there instead of just, working for the salary. That was the vision, so very idealistic.
Okay, did you make your vision come true then?
Well, I think at one point it started to look like it was coming true, but I think that I kind of started to, the thing that discouraged me was that in order to arrive to a point where actually you can do much more and where that vision can actually start to materialize, strangely, I found myself being more alike to the bosses that, I sort of disliked. So in order to create that environment, in order to fulfill that ideal vision, I sort of found myself having to be in a way that I was trying to avoid being, in the first place. So that was kind of a very interesting realization, and very surprising, because it was obviously conflicting with the idea. So, like the condition to do what I wanted to do is to be what I didn't want to be. So at one point I said, okay, I probably need to take a break and see, look at all of this from a different perspective. And that's when I actually started to kind of slow down the pace, and I, went traveling and sort of transformed the company, the agency, into a work from home kind of a business, and sort of for the moment gave up on this idea of having people physically in one place and trying to make this kind of a playground company.
So at that point, how many people did you actually have working in the physical office?
Well, at the top, at the peak, it was about 10 people.
Okay, and then you said, okay, now we are not going to the office anymore. I'm gonna go, off I go, travel the world, whatever. And how did people react to that? Like, did they say like, okay, cool? Did they continue to do their work, or did you put the whole company in pause?
Yeah. So I remember when I made this decision, I was having a vacation on a remote island in the Indian Ocean. And I came back. I made that then a decision that, you know, we're gonna sort of shift to a remote agency. And I came back to Zagreb, you know, gathered the team, and then I said, hey, look, you know, this is the thing. The world is changing. I am changing. We are changing. So I think that actually we could do better work and we could function better and adapt to the environment if we decide to sort of not come to the office or make like office just an optional place. So, you know, from now on, let's try to do, you know, work from home and see how it goes. And then we did that like for about 2.5 months. But for some reason, people just didn't have the necessary discipline. And I think it was, you know, the current setup of the profiles that were working there were more sort of compatible with the idea of working together, because people were young, you know, fresh out of college. They didn't have the necessary discipline, etc. They needed a lot of guidance. So things started to kind of break at one point in terms of efficiency. And then I said, okay, guys, you know, like for those of you that want to continue and have a conventional job at a company, you know, here's your severance package, you know, here's a couple of, you know, bonuses or whatever, you know, for you to manage the transition in the couple of months. And then a lot of people who were working there managed to get, you know, jobs abroad. Some went to Ireland, some went to Holland. You know, most of them were like from zero to hero kind of guys and girls. And then a couple of them that were sort of more disciplined, we continued collaborating, and we still collaborate today. But, you know, like I said, my focus has shifted a little bit. So, you know, the company now has its own management. I'm still kind of the owner of the company, but I'm like not involved in operationally on what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. So I had a chat a couple of weeks ago with the CTO of one of the companies that I know, and they during the whole Corona thing, a lot of people had to stay at home and work from home, and he had a lot of ideas making people work from home more, so he can be more competitive and also offer people flexible working, stuff like that. And he had a lot of pushback from his HR department saying, if we allow people to work from home, they will not be as disciplined, they will not be as productive, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of those things kind of just change because people are productive. I think people are very conscious about their work. They want to be productive. They want to still contribute. I don't think a lot of people consider like, now I'm at home, I'm just not going to do anything and get my pay. I don't think people think like that. Just that's maybe I trust and believe in people more, but this is how I feel about a lot of people in this industry, that people actually want to make great stuff and want to do good work. So he kind of find himself in a position where people are actually working from home, being more productive. And how would you now? So now basically everybody needs to work from home, and it's going to change. And I believe that a lot of companies will at some point just offer work from home as a normal thing, because it's been proven that it works. So how would you now choose? How would you divide the work between who comes to the office, who works from home? How would you make a bigger company that has more than 10 people compatible in a way where some people want to work from home? Would you make it mandatory? Would you make it like, what would be your approach?
Yeah. So several aspects of this issue, right? So one is that now the mentality is changing. You know, going back when I started off a couple of years ago, well, 5-6 years, if you were not having an office, you were kind of not considered a real company, right? So a company without an office, at least in the mentality that is currently kind of prevailing in this area of the world, which doesn't have a rich tradition of entrepreneurship in general, you know, and let alone of virtual entrepreneurship or, virtual kind of work from home, it's always kind of the brick and mortar was always considered superior to any kind of digital work. Nowadays, even, you've got kids that are making millions from, working in the software development industry. And their grandmothers still want them to be doctors or, like, hey, when are you going to have a real job? Because I don't understand what are you doing with your computer. That's not a job, right?
Yeah. I agree.
If you come home, yeah.
I just want to say my grandma had the same sentence with me, like, you are always on your computer, because from her perspective, my grandma was a seamstress. So from her perspective, she would spend her entire day at the sewing machine. So for her, it's like, I'm sitting at this machine and doing one thing. And from her perspective, I'm sitting at a computer doing one thing. She just couldn't perceive that I can be doing hundreds of different things sitting at this one machine.
Yeah.
So it was this generational gap where I could understand, like, I can play a game, or I can learn, or I can work, or I can just, there are a lot of stuff that you can do. And it took a while to explain our world to her. So yeah, I agree about brick and mortar being in people's minds, like, oh, you're a real company. When I started my first company with a friend of mine, our first goal was to have a real office. So we invested our first money into renting a place, buying all of the furniture, buying the desks, buying everything to be like proper office. And my computer is still at the same desk. So this is the desk that's been now 10 years old, and it's still as good as new when I got it. And it's like really good investment, but it was a big investment at the time, and we took a loan to get it. And we had an office, and in span of almost 2 years, I think we had total of like 3 meetings in our office. Like, people didn't care, and a lot of our clients wanted us to come over to their office because they were brick and mortar offices. So at the end of our first company run, we kind of realized that it was a huge waste of time and resources and effort to have something that actually did not matter.
Yeah. Well, it did matter, but not for doing the job. It mattered for sort of, it mattered to the same extent why people wear suits or drive,
No, yeah,
cars.
I understand
It's
the idea,
like,
but for us, it didn't. For us, we didn't get that effect. We didn't get like, oh, they have an office, because we just could have put in the same address and because nobody came to our place. So it didn't make any difference. It was like, I'm sitting in an office imagine that I'm sitting in a suit now in my home office. Like, it wouldn't make any difference to anybody. Because nobody knew that we had an office, and we had a custom paint job on the walls, and it was like really nice, but nobody ever saw it apart from our friends.
Maybe you were ahead of time.
Yeah, that's how I've been feeling since I was in grade school.
Well, hopefully the world will catch up with you.
Yeah, and you too.
Sooner rather than later, yeah. So anyway, just to continue on that tangent, I mean, now the conditions are much more favorable now to sort of create a normal, regular, efficient team with people working from home, because no longer people, treat officeless companies as, being not serious. Now it's kind of becoming the mainstream thing, work from home. So the mentality is shifting, but 5 years, and in the work that we do in our industry, 5 years, that's kind of like a century, in more traditional sense, because in 5 years things change. So
yeah, absolutely. One thing that I like here in London is that a lot of companies, regardless of their size, they're mostly renting like a place in a co-working space. Like, they have an office, but it's within the same building, and then we would just meet in the hot desking area, or just rent out a meeting room. So again, I kind of, in the last couple of years, I don't think I ever went to a company that has their own, like, big office thing. Everybody was like kind of downsizing already, and now it feels that it's going to be even more and more like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what comes to mind is I mean the WeWork concept. Not getting into the WeWork business, but the WeWork concept. It was obviously, it was getting a lot of traction before the whole thing blew off. With all the management issues. But it wasn't that the demand was lacking. It was more that there were some management issues, etc. And then came the pandemic, etc. But more and more people were sort of abandoning the idea of having this kind of a fixed office, and were more into, hey, let's just have like a all across the city, like a bunch of distributed places where I can just come in with my laptop, plug it in. And to my knowledge, like WeWork was trying to sort of steer the ship more towards business to business, in terms of being like a hub that would offer sort of very flexible in and out office space to big corporations like, whatever, Google, Oracle, to all of these, how can I say that? Conventional businesses with offices, because the the style of working has changed. People are starting to be more mobile. They want to, they want to experience other places. Travel has become cheap. So you want to be able to be working for a company, but not necessarily in one place. And, today you'll be working from London, but maybe tomorrow you want to go to Dublin, and you don't want to change jobs. You just want to change, the sort of geographical place where you're working. So I think that's going to kind of be the future. This doesn't mean that, having an office doesn't make sense, but it's going to be to a lesser extent, I think, than
Yeah.
we are used to think.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what will happen with companies like little big law firms or big traditional businesses like that had expensive high street offices that were paying tons of money for it, and basically in the last couple of months they were working the same work they did without those offices. So how about you charge me less, because you don't need to be working from a gold-plated crystal tower. You can just be working, your people can work from home, and how about you charge me less for the same service? Maybe
Yeah.
that will change as well.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking just this morning when I woke up, I was thinking, how can I make money on this new shift in terms of workspace and workplace? Like, how can I probably would make this is not a financial advice, but it would make sense to short on the long term, to short the real estate business, because I think a lot of companies are just going to say, well, there's a better way to use this money instead of, paying expensive rent. And basically, what Corona has shown is that it's absolutely possible, and probably even more productive, to let just people, work at their own pace, and they will usually do the best work when they are kind of, they know their own rhythm. They know how they work. They know, if somebody is like more a night owl, they will be more productive between midnight and, 5 a.m., right? Somebody's going to be more productive in the morning. And, having an office it's kind of an artificial way to bring people together, which doesn't necessarily mean they're going to click. Of course, you're going to always have people that are going to take advantage of this. They're going to pretend that like they're working, but they're not, and whatever. But I think over time, you should be able to identify these problems, and then it's kind of, I have a lot of trust in complex systems to sort of handle things on their own. So if there's someone who's taking advantage, then the other coworkers are gonna sort of, try to fix this problem in a certain way, and soon you're gonna see who is the troublemaker, and then you deal with that. Then,
of course, it will level out on its own. It's gonna balance out, and then you will just pick out who's not being productive and just replace them, and that's it.
Replace them, or offer education, or say like, hey, we've noticed that you'll be having problems with transitioning to the new style. So, this is what you can do if you're willing to take sort of a sort of a course in managing time or whatever, and then go through a series of educational points. And if you show some progress, then yeah, you can keep the job. But if not, then sorry, find something else.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. I'm gonna change the subject now because you said at one point you stopped and moved to wanted to travel the world. So because I know that you traveled the globe extensively for years, and I like to use you as an example of a real digital nomad because I know some people that are like my parents live in a city next to mine, and sometimes I go to my mom's for lunch and I take my laptop. I'm a digital nomad. Like, no, you're not. You're not a digital nomad just because you bring your laptop to your mom's apartment and you send an email from there. But I believe the true digital nomads are people like yourself that actually have a backpack and nothing else, and then actually, travel the world. And for people watching this, I want to just mention that you traveled by foot last year the entire track called
Camino.
El Camino de
Camino de,
Santiago. Yeah,
Camino de Santiago, yes.
that's one. So that was, I think, an amazing thing. And I don't think a lot of people realize that they can actually do the same thing. A lot of people have this mindset, oh, I have a lot of obligations, a lot of stuff to do. Their life gets in the way and they can't make that pause and break from life, especially if they are working in traditional, going to work, going to office kind of job. And it's like hard to take, oh, I'm going to take 3 months off, 6 months off, travel the world. But I know that you've been speaking a lot about traveling being the most cheapest way to live, actually. And I would like you to expand more on this.
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, yeah, it's true and it's not true. Depends on how you travel and where you travel, obviously, right? But if we are saying, is it easier to live a life which is sort of grounded in freedom and the ability to move and the ability to explore? Is it easier to live that kind of life? Is it easier to sort of manage your expenses in that sense, compared to having a life where you have a mortgage, a car, you are sort of plugged into the normal city life with so many distractions and so many sort of baits that constantly require from you to sort of take out your wallet and pay for things, going to the movies, just the bar culture, whatever, all of these things slowly, in the conventional life, they amount to a lot of spending, which you don't realize because it's just like bits and pieces here and there. But over time, in the course of the month, they sort of make a big chunk of your spending. So I don't know whether you personally have ever sort of kept stats on where you spend your money, but I was like, at one point I was really big on that, so I was just keeping my spreadsheet and just analyzing and using a bunch of online tools to just figure out where my money is going. And then it turns out that look, the luxury stuff, all the stuff that you don't actually need, sort of they go to 70-80% of all your expenses,
Yep.
And so when you sort of cut down on this, which you have to cut down if you're like a backpacker and you're going to I don't want to use the term third world countries, but less developed areas of the world where you pay $2 or $3 for a hostel with with a pool and a breakfast included, or you paid $2 for a 2-course meal with a drink. It kind of it's definitely much more affordable to travel. And then you can I mean, with couch surfing, with all kinds of other websites that allow you to exchange your skills for board, for accommodation. I think it's clear once you set foot on that path that it's much cheaper to travel than to own a house, pay rent or, drive a car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. To answer your question about tracking my expenses, when I've been tracking expenses for a couple of years before moving to UK, and then when we moved here, my wife and me, we were tracking literally everything, both of us. Like both of our, like we have separate accounts for our salaries, but we are tracking everything in one app, so we can track the total income and total uh, all the expenses and everything. And the thing is, we tracked everything. I know exactly where every penny went, but we didn't make any change based on the knowledge that we obtained from that. So we were aware that yes, we spend this amount for rent, this amount for utilities, this amount for restaurants, drinks, theaters, whatever. But we decided like these are the things that we actually want to spend on, and these are the things that we work for. So we didn't plan on making any changes in the immediate future. So we said, how about we just stop tracking, because it doesn't make any sense. Like our income was greater than our expenditures, which that was fine. So we said, okay, we are living the life that we want to be living. We don't do any grand. We are not hooked on like brand stuff. So like I buy $20 sneakers and I don't give a shit. So and I wear a hoodie that's like a couple of pounds. So we are not on brands. We don't spend a lot of stuff on luxury stuff. I have my computer, I have my phone, and that's basically it. We're good. So we are saving a lot of money just by being type of people that don't care about luxuries, which is I think great. I know some people like really enjoy expensive watch, expensive shoes, expensive whatever. For me, it never had any appeal. So I think it's a good thing for
Yeah.
my savings. So it kind of keeps me afloat. But we said that we are going to be thinking about shifting some of the income towards either a long-term savings or investments and stuff like that. So you mentioned that you at one point started thinking more about investments, less about actually doing the business. And we did a workshop a couple of years back on being basically, I talked about being self-employed. You talked about being financially independent. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how did you went from, okay, I'm managing an agency to I need to calculate how much money I have to be financially dependent with the lifestyle that I want to have? Like, how did you
Yeah.
make that decision?
So, like I said, I was always quite disciplined in terms of understanding my costs. And ever since I was a kid, I knew that, what I wanted to do is I want to travel. I want to understand, you know, why the fuck are we on this planet? What's the point of being born and then going through a lot of struggle, which people, obviously go through, some more, some less. But like life is generally, I mean, life is good, but for some people life is really terrible. So why, what trying to understand those two opposites, that was kind of my drive. And I knew that, like I was born in a small country in the Balkans, Kosovo, barely 2 million people. It wasn't even a country when I was born. So I was, it was a part of another country, which then stopped being a country, So the conditions were, like I wasn't born in a rich family, and I was always thinking, mostly self-made, of course, with the help of friends and family, and but mostly, trying to pull myself by my own bootstrapping myself. So I always knew that money can buy me freedom. It's not about the money. Money was just like a means to an end. So what I was interested was gaining freedom. And then I quickly realized through my employment that even though I can have a nice life as an employee, it's not gonna take me places. I'm gonna always be dependent on the boss, and the boss is gonna be dependent on on his clients. The clients are gonna be dependent on the overall economy in that place. So like I was like, I have to do something on my own, and that's why I started to work on my business, manage to save some money there. And then as I was having some extra cash, I started to think, because in order to think about investment, you have to first have some cash to invest. If you are living paycheck to paycheck, it's fine, investment, stock market, whatever. But if you don't have money to put aside, investment is not going to work. It's not going to work for you, at least not in the near term. In the long term, of course. So basically, I didn't go and do what most people would do when they sort of achieve certain success in entrepreneurship, which is buy a fancy car or buy a invest in property or things like that. I didn't do that. I was still driving my old shitty Peugeot from the last century, literally last century, 1999 manufactured. And I was saving the money and investing, and then my approach was like, okay, instead of me working for money, I'm gonna try to make money work for me. Um, and that's basically what what the whole idea is. So in order to sort of achieve financial independence, most people think you have to have a lot of money, which is not true. You need to have enough money to sustain your lifestyle, which means that this enough is very subjective, but it means essentially that you determine what is enough for you. So you have the power to decide how much or how little you want to spend in life. I am usually, I kind of follow the Zen Buddhist philosophy, and so in this sense, I'm like a minimal guy. I don't need too much luxury, like you said. It's like just wearing simple stuff, not really being a slave to brands or whatever external validation, or not trying to impress anyone. It's like focusing the interest on more substantial stuff than how you look or what you're wearing or things like that. And so in that sense, for me, not having millions doesn't mean not being able to be free, because there are ways to be free without having millions. And one of the ways to be free without having millions is to really lower down your cost base. For most people, it's very anxious not, like not to have their own place. There's a lot of insecurity in people, to just think about, not knowing what's going to happen next month would put people into a panic attack. And so it's very hard it's very hard to do that shift in sort of in mentality, and also to then take action towards financial independence, because it requires to make sort of sacrifices, which are short-term painful in the sense that you might have to leave some stuff behind, but long-term, it's kind of a gain. So it's kind of like short-term pain for the long-term gain. And a lot of people are not willing to do that for the same reason that a lot of people are not entrepreneurs, because being an or professional athletes, because while your friends and buddies are getting wasted and picking up chicks in the bar, you are either training hard, your whatever sport you're trying to excel in, or you're working hard on your business strategy, or you're hustling and trying to sort of improve on your financials.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's
I
the key
agree.
problem.
There's one quote that comes to mind while you were saying this. Not sure who said it. I think it was uh, that that rapper preacher guy.
Say the
Big.
quote, maybe. Yeah.
The quote says, "You need to be able to sacrifice everything that you are today in order to become what you could be tomorrow."
Yeah. Beautiful.
So, like at any moment, you need to be able to sacrifice who you are and what you are today in order to grow. So that kind of resonates, because if you, like you said, if you have a lot of weights taking you down, there's no freedom. And I know a lot of people think that they would love to travel the world. I did total in 2019. I think I did total of almost 40 flights. I think it was 39 flights. And I spoke to a lot of people saying, oh man, you travel a lot and you fly a lot. You were this and there. And I'm fortunate enough to have career that allows me to travel and go see my friends and family whenever I want, and it takes me to amazing places with my work, which is also great. But a lot of people see, stories on Instagram, posts on Facebook, tweets, don't see the actual being in an airport for 18 hours waiting and then flying for additional 12 and all that stuff that goes into travel. That's kind of, you can survive it when you travel once or twice a year for your holidays, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm traveling for 12 hours, then I'm going to rest for 2 weeks and I'm going to go home and back to work. But when that becomes your every couple of weeks, it takes a toll, and it drains a lot of energy. It wastes a lot of time, and I think a lot of people should try to do it before they actually make the decision and then start doing it, and then see that it's not for me, and then try to go back. I think there's a lot of points to be made in terms of how about you take a pause from your current life that you are doing, spend a couple of months doing what you think you would like to be doing for the rest of the life, and see if it is for you, and then actually make the decision.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. There's, I'm just thinking while you were saying this, I'm just thinking, what are the reasons why people generally sort of hold back in terms of trying to expand their freedom, And I think it's the conditioning that goes from the early childhood. It's like we are all kind of victims of the system that is trying to portray the world as something dangerous, that is sort of cutting our wings. I don't want to go into sort of, sounding like a conspiracy theorist, but actually a lot of the system has been rigged in a way to sort of create drones that were necessary for the factories and for the whole way the economy and the whole work style was set up. You have shifts. The factory is divided like in 3 shifts to maximize efficiency. Everybody has a specialized area where they work. So you come in, you just, grind your 8 hours there, and you go back, you just have dinner, have a beer, and, if you have still energy, you play with your kids or whatever, and then you go to sleep, you wake up tomorrow, etc. Because this is how basically, we're being conditioned to think, and our brains have physically developed to consider this like a very normal thing. So once you sort of grow into a habit, and this habit not only is a habit, but like becomes a mental model, it takes a lot of energy to change this. And then most of the people just unfortunately don't have the necessary space or environment to bring in this energy, because it means you have to continuously work on that, and so unfortunately, we kind of we go through our lives with just desiring to be free, but we don't actually inquire with enough rigor, like what does this mean? How can I make the conditions to be free? First of all, because we are taught to think that this is outside of our own potential, our own, it's something that somebody else can do. And then with this comes the myth, you need money to be free, which is not true. It's just an excuse. You don't need money. And, money has many different manifestations. Money is time, money is skills. You don't need to have necessarily the cash. You can devote time. You can put your skills. There are ways today to negotiate in these waters.
Yeah, you can provide value in exchange for something
for
else.
anything, basically. Yeah,
I agree. One thing that back to your point of we have been thought to think like this is because we went to school that was like from 8 to 2, and then high school from 8 to 3, and it's kind of it just molds you in this 9 to 5, 8 to 4 mentality of like you have 1/3 of your days for work, and then 1/3 is for sleep, and then 1/3 is for yourself actually. And then trying to break away from that template is fairly hard for a lot of people. I agree. And I think I'm fortunate enough to, ever since I was a kid, I had a strong like I don't want to say disrespect for authority, but I just didn't give a shit for them. So like, yeah, disrespect. Like I don't care about authority. Like I respect my parents, but teachers were never something for me to be for some reason like, oh, they are always right, and I always questioned whatever they said. And since I was in grade school, in like first couple of grades, I already felt, I couldn't describe it as I can today, but I felt that I was like, why do I need to spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours with these people that I don't like, that I consider that are so much different from me and have different ideas and whatever, and I'm learning these things that I will never use in my life, and I need to be doing this for the next 12, 14, 15 years in order to do something that I necessarily don't want to do. It just didn't make sense early on. It just felt like I could feel the glitch in the matrix, and it always felt that there's more to this than just this template of life checklist, like doing good in school, doing good in college, getting a driver's license, getting married, getting a kid, getting a good job, being there till you retire, and then realizing that everything was for nothing, and you just then die disappointed. It just kind of felt like it's rigged. And I'm fortunate enough to have parents that were very lenient with me in school, especially in high school. Like I would skip school a lot because I knew that I don't care about a lot of stuff there. But I spent that time at home learning Photoshop, and it turned into something that I can call a career now. So my parents were amazing enough to realize that it will develop. So actually, I think they hoped that it will develop into something that I can use later on. Like, okay, he doesn't care about chemistry, but he cares about this computer thing. So maybe it will take him somewhere, which is a good thing. But I know not everybody thinks like that. He's fortunate enough to have
Yeah.
the same upbringing. So now, in the last couple of years, I've been thinking like, what can I do with my experiences and everything that I did and everything that I learned along the way to share that with people, with everybody that I come across. So this is one of the reasons why I do talks and workshops and conferences where like I come in and see people like, hey, uh, do you know that you can be a freelancer? You don't have to be working 9 to 5. You know, you can travel. It's cheap. This is my friend Gasper. This is his lecture. Listen to this. Like a lot of people are not uh, like a lot of people are not, tied down with a sick parents, marriage, kids, and they just do not know that they can actually make this step and actually go travel and do that. So like last year when I was in Russia, I was in Siberia, and I did my talk on freelancing, and then I got the same questions after during the Q&A that I did in Croatia and in UK and in South Africa. So people have the same questions and have the same wrong ideas of how the work works and how their time can be constructed. And it's just great to see those people kind of have their light bulbs turn on. And then I get a random tweet a couple of months later, like, dude, I started my own thing. I'm a freelancing. I'm like, hi from Fiji. Like, I would never go there if there wasn't you. Like, it makes me like feel so good.
Yeah, it gives you purpose, a sense of purpose.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And this is one of the
Which is,
things that, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I think a life without a purpose is a really painful life, and unfortunately, this is the life that we are asked to subscribe to from day one. It's like it's always. I remember growing up, like obviously, my dream was to be like a painter, right? Like that was what I was doing. Like I was always the kid at the corner of the room, just sketching and drawing, etc. And then the family was like all the families, like, what are you going to do with art, right? It's like you should get a proper education and find some whatever, go be an electrical engineer or whatever, which I'm not opposing to that. I think that's a very pragmatic way, but it just goes to show that people, the environments that most of us grow up in are very limited, and until this environment sort of take a sort of a quantum leap in terms of becoming aware that today you can pretty much make a successful career with anything. It doesn't have to be like you said, like you don't have to be like your grandmother, just like doing one thing, and it doesn't have to be even physical. So hopefully, these things will change. But currently the way the education system is set up, it kind of takes it has its roots in this industrial revolution paradigm, and it was mostly made to provide or to produce sort of working drones for the factories. I mean, it's not like a conspiracy. It's just like the system was working that way. You got a factory. You want to be productive. You want to be efficient. So in order to accommodate for the workflow in a factory, you have to have people with specialized knowledge. And in order to do this, you have to have, shifts in the school. You have to have teachers who go by a certain system. They cannot move they cannot stray away from that system. And so it's like a vicious circle with a negative feedback loop, But luckily, I see now with the advent of new technologies, and especially I think Corona has made this clear also in education, that you don't actually need the institution. You do your own learning. There was the case, I don't know if you saw that, there was like some 19-year-old Thai girl that did like 9 courses from Ivy League universities, Harvard, you name it, Wharton School of Business, during the lockdown. So she completed like 9, she has 9 certificates and she's only 19. So that's it. Like, this is the new renaissance of education, where you basically choose your own courses. You have a bunch of courses to pick from. You don't have to go in only one direction, because this is not natural. Like, we humans have so much potential, and we are so multidimensional that you can be an artist at the same time, but really be good in, electrical engineering, and things like that. They work together really well.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
I don't want to be bashing out the educational system, but but I think it was necessary, but it's now becoming very archaic. It was necessary for the period of the humanity, but now I think
I wouldn't call it bashing. I would just say, like, it is what it is, and the things are changing, and we are changing much faster than the institutions are, because you have these professors that come from this certain mindset and certain principles, and now the world is changing much faster, but these people need to work. So basically, they are not catching up with the times, and it is a problem, but it will be solved in a generation or two. But I'm currently more thinking, like, what can we do now to help people now to think about what will happen in 20 years, because the way they are teaching stuff and some of the stuff being learned today in a way that it is today will not be applicable in 20 years. And there are some jobs that you need to go through regular schooling. Like, if you want to be a brain surgeon, you can't be a freelance brain surgeon that got his certificate off of YouTube. I don't want that guy operating on my head. But there are stuff that you can learn.
You wouldn't feel anything anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah. so yeah.
You make a good point.
One thing that I got feedback from one of my workshops was, like, I'm a strong advocate for freelancing and remote work, and I've been saying this for past, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years. I don't remember anymore, but and now I kind of feel that we're in a time that I just want to print out a T-shirt saying "I told you so," because like I was right. But I know there are jobs that you can't be I don't know, freelance bank teller or a freelance cashier, whatever. Like, there are physical jobs that need to be still need to be done. So it's not for everybody. And some people tell me, like, oh, what you're saying, not everybody can do it. Of course, not everybody can do it. It's not that I'm not aware, like, oh, seriously, I didn't know that there couldn't be a remote postman. Of course. Everything that we are saying here is more for people working within our industry and working in IT and related fields that have the liberties. We just want to help them actually understand that. And I don't know if you ever watched any videos from a guy called Henry Rollins.
Yeah, I know Henry Rollins, but yeah.
But you know who he is, right?
Yeah, of course.
So when I was like early 20s or something, I came across one of his videos. I was like on lawn party or something like that, and I copied a folder with some of the Comedy Central stand-ups. It was like some short clips for stand-up comedy, and one of the clips was Henry Rollins, but it wasn't a stand-up comedy. It was like his public speak, but somebody put in the same folder, and I watched this guy. Like, I was watching the thing, I wasn't laughing. It wasn't. This is not stand-up comedy, but these guys make sense. So I started
Yeah.
watching a couple of these videos, and it was like, oh shit! Like you can do like this. This guy is putting to words everything that I was kind of feeling internally, and he expressed a lot of stuff that I was like feeling on a instinct level, but I just couldn't, put into proper context. And but when he said it, it was like, oh yeah, okay, now I get it. And one of the things that I really liked was he went to, I think it was he went to Baghdad when it was like the shit show going on there. And
Yeah.
he said, like, I believe that people are inherently good and people are not evil in general. And he just went there. And so he's in his story, he says, like, I'm going to go left and I'm just going to start walking and meet people and see what happens. And he came back with some amazing stories. And I had a fortune of seeing him live last year here in London in a very small venue. It was like 150 people. Very
You
private.
lucky bastard.
Yeah, it was one-off thing. He was doing something in London, totally unrelated, and he said, like, I'm going to do a quick show in a small venue, and like tickets sold out in like a couple of minutes. I managed to grab one ticket, and it was an amazing thing. So that guy actually inspired me first time in my life to quit my job and just start my company. It was like I saw him, it was like, yeah, that's it. I'm quitting this week, and like I'm done. I'm out. I'm doing my own thing, and just providing me to give everybody that I didn't agree with this proverbial middle finger, and it was just very liberating. And I want to be the same type of inspiration to a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm sure you are, man. I mean, you do a lot of gigs everywhere. So, you're doing this podcast, even if it's just one person that sort of gets, oh, okay, I feel inspired. Maybe this isn't so hard. After all, these two bozos have done it. So, I can do it as well. So,
If
which
you
is
and me can do
true.
it, anybody can do it. I agree.
Yeah, which is
I
true.
wouldn't,
Like,
yeah, I wouldn't say it's not hard. It's simple, but it's not easy. But if it was easy, I think it wouldn't be worth it. So
yeah.
if
Well,
people have problem,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no. I say if people have problems with hard, they shouldn't do stuff that are against all conventions. But like the principles are simple. It is hard, but it's well worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, nothing is ever easy, but it's not as insurmountable as people think. And, obviously, I'm speaking about this idea of, hey, if you're happy working for some other people, if you're happy renting your time, your precious time in this limited time you have on earth, and if you are happy giving that time to some organization, whatever, and renting your time in exchange for a salary, and you're fine with that, you're fine with, getting a mortgage and, just having a regular conventional life, great, you're like, awesome, kudos to you, no problem. This is not like, I don't want to come across as coming, speaking from a superior position. So it's not about this lifestyle is better than that lifestyle. But it's more, to me at least, it's more about like, what is your purpose on this earth? And some people are in tune with their purpose while working for some other guy, or other girl, doesn't matter, and they're content and they're happy with that. But I wasn't, like, I couldn't find purpose in that sense. For me, the purpose is something, it's like a living organism that you sort of, it's almost like I felt I need to explore what happens when you try to pave your own way. Like, I need to see how far your consciousness can develop, how far you can go, whether you can really, whether, eat, sleep, work, is all there is, or is there something else to it? So I mean, for anyone who is interested in exploring and getting out of the comfort zone and exploring more sort of more deeply into the nature of existence, I think that sort of quitting your job is a necessary condition. It's not about quitting your job and then, like you said, like the proverbial middle finger. That's more like a symbol for saying, hey, I'm ready to take on the challenge of growing to my like biggest potential as a human being, because that is your purpose. You have you need to have the I'm missing the word, but you need to take responsibility to be what the highest form of being you can be,
the best version of
and if
yourself.
Yeah, the best version of yourself. And it's not about self-improvement, like, hey, like think positive or whatever, but it's just like you are an organism. From the day you are born, you're growing physically, but you also need to grow mentally, and you also need to grow spiritually. And then some environments are better for growth than others. Growth only happens when there is enough stimuli and uncertainty in your life, which means getting out of the comfort zone. At the edge of your comfort zone, that's where learning happens. So if you are staying in a very content sort of bubble of, shiny, happy job, people, whatever, you're not going to grow as much. You will be happy, you will be content, you will have whatever, you can sort of say, okay, I'm happy with what I have, but you might not necessarily take that extra step to really challenging yourself and really discovering what else is there, apart from, just the typical sleep, eat, work kind of lifestyle. That for me is the point of, quitting and showing the figure. It's like, let's see what else is there.
I agree 100%. And how about we end this on that note? Because I think it's a high note.
I don't want to end it. I'm just getting started. No, I'm kidding.
Maybe we could do another one and pick up at this point, and then like say like this is the episode 2 of our talk, and then just go drill down, because I wanna allow people to digest what we said, and whoever wants to see this thing go a little bit deeper, then we could do episode 2, and I'm more than happy to do it. I think we could go into a little bit more of philosophy of being the best version of yourself, instead of how to of getting out of that 9-to-5 lifestyle.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I hope that I've given at least some value in this exchange. And
you don't have to hope again. You did, for sure.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the opportunity. I mean, it's always I'm always inspired, to speak to you, and you always you have this talent to get that out of me, which gets me pumping, and like I feel like I have a light bulb now in my head. Probably after the talk, I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm gonna go and write a novel or something.
Well, the thing is, you have the same effect on me, so thank you, because this is how I feel after speaking to you. So
thank you.
Oh, this is amazing. Yeah, thank you for joining me, because it's already been over an hour. So I think we do time travel when we speak, and one of the reasons why I don't want to speak to you too often, because a century would go by too quickly. So
oh, that's too much. I'm blushing.
So thank you for your time, and I hope we're gonna do episode 2 very soon. And thanks everybody for tuning in, for watching this video and listening to the podcast if you're listening on audio version. And please reach out either to me or to Gasper. We are both on Twitter. There are links to our profiles will be somewhere, wherever you're listening. I'm going to be sure that put everybody. So whoever wants to reach out, ask questions, I'm sure both of us will be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thanks, guys. Thanks to everyone who was tuning into this. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, man.